Hello, everyone. My name is Fariz Giga. I am a graduating MArch 1 this year, and I am here to introduce our speaker for the day, Richard Saul Wurman. Under his orders, this is going to be quick and dirty. Spurred by the dance between his curiosity and ignorance, Richard Saul Wurman has sought ways to make the complex clear. He has now written, designed, and published 83 books on topics ranging from football to healthcare to city guides. But he likes to say that they all spring from the same place, his ignorance. Described by Fortune magazine as an intellectual hedonist with a hummingbird mind, Wurman has been shaped by an epiphany he had as a young man, ignorance and embracing the understanding of what it is like to not understand. Wurman created and chaired the TED Conference from 1984 through 2002, bringing together many of America's clearest thinkers in the fields of technology, entertainment, and design. He has been awarded several honorary doctorates, Graham Fellowships, a Guggenheim, and numerous grants from the National Endowment for the Arts. He is the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt National Design Awards. Wurman has also been awarded the annual gold medal from Trinity College Dublin, Ireland, and a gold medal from the AIGA. He is also a fellow of the AIA. Wurman lives in Newport, Rhode Island with his wife, novelist Gloria Naj, and their 3 yellow labs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Please join me in welcoming Richard Saul Wurman.
The middle of the auditorium is a blank space. Doesn't seem designed. You know, it should be chairs here and an aisle on either side and then some side aisles, right? And that's over on the left-hand side and it's symmetrical. Are you better than those people? So why have a podium over there? Everything is design. Everything's design. My speech, by the way, anybody, you do not insult me whatsoever if you're not interested in what I'm saying to get up and walk out at any time. It really doesn't, you won't be embarrassed. It won't hurt my feelings, honestly. I'm not interested in most of the shit I hear. I mean, I just can't keep it together when people talk. I find it really boring. So if you find it boring, go. There'll be a few that won't. Why is nobody sitting next to Moshe Zafti? Did you do something wrong when you taught here?
I saved it for Nicholas.
Okay, Nicholas is supposed to be here. I invited some people here because the beginning of I was going to share, they invited me to talk, but I wanted to share it with some friends. So Frank Gehry was supposed to be here, and he's not even coming in for the Pritzker dinner tonight. He canceled the trip. He called me yesterday morning. But Frank was supposed to come. And Moshe I asked to come, you're loyal, and Nicholas Negroponte. And I also, and Nicholas said he was coming. He wrote me this morning. He said he was coming. He's coming from New York. So, Nicholas, you're not here, are you? No? He might walk in late. And I invited Jack Dangerman, who was a graduate from here, somebody you and I know. In fact, we met in Jack's office a little while ago. And he's a graduate from here. He got his master's degree in landscape architecture. And I was going to talk about 5 people, those 4 and me, to begin with. And this, I know, is a bifurcated audience. They're parents and kids, and you don't know what the kids have been doing, and the kids are anxious to get out of here, and you want them to be comfortable, and you think they're going to start like in Hollywood. You start in the mailroom, and you work your way up to directing the studio, or head of the studio, or president of the studio, in this vertical silo. And you all have in your mind that you work your way up. Well, let me tell you, a lot of silos have fallen over. And you don't work your way up in things so much anymore. And I was going to talk about these 5 people who are wonderful. These are friends of mine, not acquaintances of mine. There's a big difference between everybody says, oh, they're a good friend of mine. It's all bullshit. Most people are not your good friend. But these are 4 people who are friends. I mean, Moshe and I have known each other for more than 50 years. We met in Lou Kahn's office. Frank and I have known just about as long. Nicholas just about as long. Jack is a more recent person in my life, but I have a partnership with him. So I do have a few crib notes, but I think I can do it without it. I can start with me. I'm 78 years old. I went to University of Pennsylvania. These will be real fast. Went to University of Pennsylvania, was 5-year undergraduate, graduated first in my class, had an architectural practice for 13 years, then sort of went bankrupt, belly up. 45, I was bankrupt. I now have quite enough money. And I haven't done architecture in a long time, but I've run 40 conferences, done 80-some books, and I'm doing okay. And it's all interesting to me, and the books have been on medicine, the conferences on medicine, the conferences on just thinkers. I've had an interesting life, and I really owe it to a very solid education, a learning experience with architecture, and particularly with Lou Kahn, who remains my mentor. But my silo is not this way. The only two people who didn't fire me in a job was Lou Kahn and Charles Eames, the designer. Everybody else fired me. So I'm a little abrasive, I guess. Moshe and I have known each other for quite a long time. Moshe is remarkable. At 29, he was the most famous architect in the world. He was on the cover of Newsweek magazine, when there was a Newsweek magazine. He had done Habitat at the World's Fair in Montreal. He was also head of urban design of this university. He's going to be 75 or 75, right? Younger than I, but not a spring chicken. Has had this amazing career when he was so young. We were all jealous. We all hated him because he was so early, so famous, and had done so much so early, which is unusual in architecture, before he was 30. His wife and he are probably the only two husband and wife who didn't know each other probably then. I don't know if they know each other. Did completely different things. Both were on the cover of Newsweek. She was on the cover of Newsweek because she was in the Israeli army as a captain or lieutenant. Which was? Lieutenant. Okay. See, remember that. But after him, he was on the cover first. He was a private. There you go. And Moshe's career went like that, then it sort of went a little flat, and now it's way up again, and he's just did a masterpiece in Arkansas, a museum that doesn't photograph that well, but I went to see it with him. No, it just doesn't photograph that well. You can't photograph it, but it's a brilliant building. It's a showstopper. It's a brilliant building. The museum done by, for Alice Walton, of her collection of a couple $1 billion worth with the building of American art. And it's a terrific building, worth a detour to this stupid little town that is the headquarters of Walmart, you know, where 60% of the population shops sometime or another. Amazing. And it's just really, really, it's an amazing building when you realize you can go through a whole museum and you can just keep on walking forward and around, and you don't have to say, well, do I want to go into that room or that room? It's just the whole museum just wanders around. It's a really terrific. I enjoyed that day so much, and I've told him several times about that. So his career just stayed in architecture. Frank went here for Frank Gehry, who you all know of. Frank, he didn't do anything until he was 50. He didn't do anything. I mean, some leaky little houses. Well, that's what he did. And I don't think he still can type. And yet he does. He has a company called Gehry Technologies, which is one of the leading companies in developing the technologies, not only to do gloopy buildings, but to just do straight buildings. The World Trade Center in New York that Childs done from SOM uses this technology. But he had a very late start. And then, you know, he likes fish, and he likes sailing. This sounds like a dating service. He likes fish, he likes sailing, and ice hockey. And he's 84, okay? Jack Dangerman is 68? I know how old he is. No, it's upside down, but I'm going to read it upside down. 68, I'm right. Jack went here and got a master's degree in landscape architecture, and then never did any landscape architecture whatsoever. He got involved in GIS, Global Information Systems. He has the largest company in the world for doing GIS and computer mapping. He's my partner. We're doing a large thing called opening in July, because I'm interested in, I've done several atlases and guidebooks. I love cartography. And I'm doing a thing called the Urban Observatory, a thing that I invented. of comparatively mapping cities of the world, and the first urban observatory opens in June in San Diego. But Jack he was trained in landscape architecture. He did the landscaping around his 14-building campus in Redlands. He's in Redlands, California, which is nowhere. Trust me, it's nowhere. There's a lot of avocado trees and orange trees, and it's near Ontario Airport. There's a little college called Redlands College. I met the dean there. I kept him waiting. He was pissed. I kept him waiting because I was in a meeting with Laura and Jack half a year ago, or whatever it was. Beautiful campus, 14 buildings, beautiful landscape. But he went to Redlands High School, so that's where he has his 6,000 staff, his American staff. He has 6,000 people working there. And he's in the Forbes list of wealthiest people in America. And he started as a landscape architect. And he's a lovely, gentle man. You wouldn't see big business around him or that sense of stuff. He's a terrific, I mean, I really love Jack. I've only known him maybe 7 years, and we've become quite close. Then Nicholas, I was going to save him from that. Nicholas, did you get in here? No. Nicholas? Okay. Well, Nicholas Negroponte, who's a good friend of Moshe's, Macau, I met him a long time ago. His first wife set the type for a book I did called Yellow Pages of Learning Resources in 1972 when I was chairman of the International Design Conference in Aspen. Long time ago. And then I met Muriel Cooper, and you know Muriel Cooper over there, Nathan Feldy. And she was doing all the graphics for the Media Lab. Brilliant graphic designer who died suddenly and quite early. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman. And Nicholas's best friend. And in 1984, I did my first TED conference. He came to the first TED conference. And at that point, he got up and announced the forming of the Media Lab, 1984. And the Media Lab doesn't do architecture. The thing he did before was called the Architecture Machine. It was really the Media Lab before the Media Lab. And that didn't do architecture either, all part of MIT. And the Media Lab changed the world. It had a lot of effect on the world. But he's trained in architecture. So these people are trained in architecture, urban design. He was head of urban design here. They're trained, they've had the basic foundation, as I have, in design, in architecture, in landscape architecture. It was the foundation of a way of thinking about the world, about the way you should all be thinking, and not let that goddamn thing over on the left-hand side or have this empty. You should think about the design of everything. You should all want to sit down the very front rows. You should rush to the front rows when you come into an auditorium, not hang in the back so you can leave. You should assert yourself into listening. Listen to what people say. Just listen and see if you can do that connective tissue. Can you make that connective tissue through things? You should look at everything the opposite. Mr. Chow owns this restaurant chain, said, if something is true, the opposite is truer. Think about what opposites are. Think about flipping everything you have in your mind. I was just looking at a documentary the other day. I don't need these things anymore. And I didn't make a mistake. I got it all right without looking at it. I watch television a lot. I love television. And I love watching television. I love all the documentaries. And I have two machines that record 140 hours each, and I watch everything fast forward at night, and I just love it. And well, I do. I was watching something on the Black Plague. There's a lot of stuff on the Black Plague. And I'm fascinated with the Black Plague because they talk about how people got it so fast and died so quick, and 50% of the population of Europe died, and it came in through Marseille, 1348 to 1351 or something like that. And half the people died, and it started the flagellants movement. It was against the Catholic Church. They were flagellating themselves. And it was a decimation. It was horrible. Everybody knew somebody who died in the Black Plague. I mean, your next door neighbor, your family. You couldn't escape the fact of how horrible this is and how contagious this was. And I'm fascinated with the other half of the story. 50% of the people lived. 50% lived. Why did they live? What did they do? That's more interesting. They never talk about that. Nobody talks about the flip of things, the opposite of stuff. The opposite of stuff, I mean, they're still alive. I mean, I'm not saying it's not horrible that 50% died, but they're dead, right? Don't go to funerals. They don't know. It's the 50% that are alive that are interesting. So, everybody had enough to eat. Because before the Black Plague, there was starvation. They don't tell you that. Now, if you could choose between death and starvation, I guess you would choose starvation or not having enough to eat. But that's not the choice, right? So there was a lot to eat because there was only half the number of people, but they didn't have enough people to farm. They didn't have enough people to weave cloth. And what happened was an explosion of inventions for farming, for weaving, machinery, and something we call the Renaissance. Now, I'm not proposing we have another Black Plague so we can have another Renaissance. But it's interesting to look at patterns of things that change things, and the connectivity of every single thing. Music composed in Vienna. I saw music composed in honor of a plague, of things that occur because of other reasons. About 20 years ago, I did a book, and I see somebody here I know. It was called Information Anxiety. I don't know if you were involved in that one or not. You were involved in that, were you? Long time ago. And it became sort of a cult book. And information anxiety was really not about the information explosion, but the explosion of non-information. There's a couple seats down here. If you want to come down, right here, you can be closer, right there. Yeah, right down. It was not about the explosion of information, and we think there's an explosion of information because there's all this stuff here. But most of the stuff that's there is non-information. I mean, you can't understand it even if you read it. I've done this. I'm not going to do it today, but if you just give me the front page of New York Times or Wall Street Journal and take any story in the front page, think of the dumbest question you can ask of the story. Just some dumb, simple, basic question about what the story is about or the headline's about. It is not answered in the story. Just try it. You'll see I'm right. Nothing is explained. Is there anybody here who could answer a few simple questions about Obamacare? Can anybody answer some questions about the yen becoming more valuable, less valuable, and the Japanese economy going up or down and how it's going to affect our economy? The stuff that's in the front page every day. Right? Can you answer any question about anything? Is anything explained? Right? Moshe just had his knee operated on, had an amazing recovery for an old guy. But there's a lot of things you can do if your knee hurts. You can get a cane, right? You don't have to have it operated on, but I would get a cane. I would do anything but get it operated on. You could have a wheelchair. You could sit in a chair and if you're rich enough, and have 4 people carry you. You could massage it. You could not massage it. You could exercise it. You could not exercise it. But you also have a choice when you get your knee fixed. You can have a titanium thing or a composite thing or a plastic thing. You can do different things. There's a ceramic plug you can put in there, and you want to be operated on the right time of the day by a doctor who's done a lot of them and all those kinds of things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to find out just about a lousy knee in an old person, right? There's a lot to know, and nothing's explained. You can't find it out. You can't find it out. David Angus, who's a brilliant doctor, I was just talking to him. Oh, he was at WWW. He was at my last conference. I was just talking to him, and he's really against vitamins. He said, most of the vitamins we take are just what cancer love to eat. Just think about that. It makes sense, doesn't it? If they're good and they're nutritious, why wouldn't cancers like to eat them? The kids are freaking happy that you're having those vitamins. Just slug them down. We get more to eat and we can grow. Just think a lot of things are just the opposite of what you think they are. Is Dave Gallo here? Dave was going to come. Well, I was supposed to meet with him later, but he's with Woods Hole. He came, gave a speech in 1999 and showed us all the black vents in the Pacific. Now, of course, they find black vents in the Atlantic Ridge, too, and all, which come out with superheated water on top, and they're much more than a mile down, several miles down. And from the top, and living in the top, are worms, tube worms. There's one name for me called tube Wurman, and that's supposed to get a laugh. It didn't. But it is named for me. There is a variety called tube Wurman. And they're the fastest growing life forms of animal life on the planet. Their tails are in 40-degree or less water, and their heads are in superheated water, about 1,000 degrees. And they live off of chemosynthesis, not over photosynthesis. When I went to school, if you had said that all life didn't come from the sun, you would have flunked. Just flunked, period. That was absolutely wrong. All life comes from the sun. Well, it doesn't. There's probably more life comes from chemosynthesis. It's probably the way life started on Earth, is chemosynthesis. In the Pacific, it's in the superheated water. In the Caribbean, underneath the Caribbean, there's a large liquid methane lake, super cold, that's kept underneath there by the pressure of the water. And there are tube worms that are there, and that they are probably the oldest living creatures on Earth. Very slow growing. Now, that might not be interesting to people here, but it's interesting to me to understand the connections to everything and the way it gives me courage to challenge anything that somebody tells me, because it might be wrong. Not a little bit wrong, but a whole lot wrong. Somebody from MIT, Philip Morrison, he was a cripple. He worked on Los Alamos. He used to come to TED. I don't know if you ever saw Philip. Philip and Phyllis Morrison, and they both passed away. They used to come to early TEDs, and they both wrote, he was an astrophysicist, they both wrote all the book reports that come out monthly in Scientific America on every subject. So whether the book report was on astronomy or was on cartography or was on medicine or was on biology or any one of the ologies, they wrote them all. He was brilliant. I remember him coming in earlier 90s, the early TEDs. He came and he said, I know you won't believe me, and it was sort of laughable at that point. Yeah, it'll be okay. It's a little boring now. We'll get to a good part in a minute, okay? He said, I'll predict that there's going to be, they're going to discover not hundreds but thousands of planets. And they hadn't discovered one yet. And we were really told there wasn't any, there couldn't be such a thing. And now nobody even raises their eyebrows as they discovered some new planets. And we learned in Star Trek that space was a vacuum, and now we know it's 96% black energy. I'm just trying to ask you to give each other permission. You should give your kids permission to have an interesting life, no matter where it goes, and to find the connections to things, maybe into some things you do. And the kids should give themselves permission. You don't want to be called kids. The young people in this room should give themselves permission that there is a life that isn't just a silo. At 45 years old, I was destitute. I was out of a job and fired from the last job. I was dean of a school, got fired from that even. I mean, that's pretty hard to get fired from dean of a school. I mean, you got to be pretty. You have to get somebody really pissed off to get dean. That's okay. The vice president who fired me got fired for firing me. And so I had my revenge. And it actually turned out okay. In that same book that I talked about before, I came up with a notion called Latch, L-A-T-C-H, that there's only 5 ways of organizing information. Not scientific. And we had the conversation today where I was saying I have these theories about things that they're not scientific, but I keep on throwing them out there. And then eventually, other people use them, and then they become rules, right? And I said, I thought there was an infinite way of organizing information. And this is part of that book, Information Anxiety. And I found that there was only 5, location, alphabet, time, category, and hierarchy. And now there's been some little, you can go online, you can see some animated films on it. There's a big book by Tashin, that thick, that came out on information design, and the whole book is organized by Wurman's theory of organization of information called Latch. So I have a new theory that I'll propose to you today on innovation, because I'm tired of driving into San Francisco and having it called the Innovation City, and then next to it there's an innovation car, and next to it there's an innovation whatever, that they're using the word innovation for everything. They say putting a camera on the back of a car so you see who you run over is innovation, right? It's not innovation, it's just a little doohickey, it's nothing. So I thought, I tried to think of, is there a limited number of ways of innovating? And I thought of another acronym. Instead of Latch, I thought of one called a NOSE. I don't think I told you this yet. So it's N-O-S-E, a nose, like that. That's the picture I gave you. It's called noses, right? There's a picture of, some people know these people, of Moshe, Frank, Gehry, myself, and Massimo Vignelli. And we're all facing one way, and we all have big noses. So it's called noses. It's a nice photo. So the A is addition. So here's innovation by addition. Apple didn't invent most everything in here. They added them together. Nobody invented the car. Somebody put a motor, they had a choice of 3 or 4 motors, on a 4-wheel vehicle. Somebody invented a 4-wheel vehicle that came after the 2-wheel vehicle and the 3-wheel vehicle. They did a 4-wheel vehicle. Probably should have kept it 3. It's a more stable thing. But this is innovation by addition. Cars, innovation by addition. A lot of things, you add things together. N is need. Need creates a lot of innovation. O is opposites. And a lot of things are invented by the opposite of what you think it is. Just the absolute opposite. When I first did TED in 1984, now I'm reinventing my history because I didn't think this way then, but I'm making believe I was smarter then. And what I did is I subtracted out all kinds of things that were part of the conference. All conferences were white men in suits sitting on panels with a golf course nearby and a lectern in the middle that hid their groins so they were less vulnerable, and a place to put down a speech like he had a place for a speech, and read it. And I got rid of all that. As you saw, you didn't see, but I took away all the things on the front row because I didn't save seats. I can't stand saving seats. So I took away them all because I just don't believe in it. Unless you're a cripple or over 100, I don't save a seat for you. You should just sit where you sit, and you should sit down front. And if you don't have a lectern, you can't read a speech, right? I can hold it down there, right? I took away things. I took away long introductions. 1 year and 3 consecutive days, I had 70 speakers, but over those 3 days, one speaker was I introduced by saying Bill Gates, and he came up on stage. The second day, on the stairways going up was a raked auditorium. Sitting on the stairway was the most famous at that time business person in the United States. His name was John Skelly, and he ran Apple, and he sat next to the president's wife at a State of the Union speech. But I just said John, and he came down. And the last day, I said Q, and Q came on stage, and I said, before you start talking, Q was Quincy Jones, before you start talking, I want to make this observation. that the shorter the introduction, the more famous you are. So think about that. That's the opposite. It's not a long introduction that makes you famous. We think the long introduction, well, the person must be important. No, the shorter the introduction, the more famous you are. It's like, is better than reading something. And it says more, too. So we have NOs. We have A, which is addition, N, which is need, O, which is opposite, S, which is subtraction, and E is epiphany. Some things just get invented by somebody who has an idea. You can't predict what it is, whether it's a Post-it note or a Segway. You can't predict whether it's going to stay around or not, but somebody just feels like doing something. Nobody asks them to do it, they just do it. They're fun to think of things and just do them. Probably habitat was an epiphany when you did that. Some things are epiphanies. Probably some of Frank's first bold moves were epiphanies. Nobody needed a building like Bilbao. It turned out after it was done, they needed it. After it was done and you did it, they needed it. Nobody needed TED when I did TED, but after it was done, people felt they needed it. So sometimes things become needed. Nobody needed instant photography. Of course, that company has gone bankrupt, but nobody needed it when it was invented. But he did it. He had an epiphany, and he invented something. How long do you want me to talk? I mean, I can talk longer. We can clear the room of everybody who's not interested, and I can talk to a little group, or I could just say goodbye. You give me instructions. Do I have more to say? No, I have 3 hours to say. Don't say that. Huh? Huh? 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Okay. Well, that's not unreasonable. Let's talk about dogs. Because I have 3 dogs, and I love my dogs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're somewhat biblical dogs. And they've changed my life. Because a dog is, depending on who you are, it's between a reasonable 2-year-old to 4-year-old, depending on your dog. And you can treat it. They can't talk, but that's about their brains and about their vocabulary they have. That's why we love them so much, because we love no matter how mischievous 2-year-olds or to 3-year-old people, kids are, we love them deeply. They make us love them by their antics and their behavior, and dogs are that forever. We love dogs. Now, every year there's I'm just trying to show you the madness of people, the utter madness of people. There are things on television and everywhere where people bring their dogs to get judged, and they have 6 or 7 categories of which they are, what kind of dogs they are, so they march them in and they do that. And we've created all those categories. There was no categories, We've made dogs. We've made their shape, size, and everything. There was an artificial thing. We could have painted their picture as well as just created played with their gene pool. But 2 of the categories, 2 of these 7 categories, 1 category is miscellaneous, by the way. 2 of the 7 categories are sporting dogs and non-sporting dogs. Do you understand what I'm saying? There can't be any other categories. Next time you watch a dog contest, or whatever they call them, the dog shows, you watch that there's 2 categories, sporting dogs and non-sporting dogs. That's all of Dorkdom. And you all put up with it. That's what I'm talking about. You all put up with not understanding things, with not having anything explained, with not knowing what you're reading in the newspaper, with not knowing what each other is saying. You probably had a conversation with somebody saying today, so how's it going? Keeping busy? How you feeling? I mean, they're all insulting questions because you really can't get an answer to them, and you don't want an answer, and nobody's going to give you an answer. And it's just filler. It's just filler. We're all devoting our lives to this stuff that you wouldn't put in a packing crate. questions are difficult. Lucan said that a good question is better than a brilliant answer. I don't take questions, by the way, because questions come, no, they come in two varieties, bad questions and speeches. Every once in a while, there's a good question that sneaks in. It's not worth your time. I know, that's very un-PC, but it's just what it is. It's hard to ask a good question that's a thoughtful question. In a good question is the answer. And that's part of conversation. Moshe was at a meeting I just did, which I decided to subtract out every single thing I possibly could from a conference, and it was called WWW Conference. You can go online, it's called the WWW Conference. And I invited the 50 best people I could get to come. Absolutely better than any TED conference, better than any 5 TED conferences. It was really phenomenal group of people. It was really terrific. Only 180 people in the audience, not many. Jack Dangerman gave me his auditorium in Redlands. They came to a place that was godforsaken. Why would you go to Redlands? And since he has 2,400 acres of oranges and avocados, I had guacamole bars and fresh orange juice things there. And Yoyo Ma was there every once in a while. Yoyo played. It was spectacular people. Frank was there, of course. Moshe was there. David Blaine, the magician. You think of Julie Taymor. They all came. Pinker's up here. Pinker was there. Stephen Pinker. From all fields. There was 2 people there. One was an astrophysicist and one was a small particle physicist. And I had them up there. They faced each other. Nobody faced the audience. So I took away all presentations. Nobody had a presentation. Nobody faced the audience. There was no screen behind them. I had Jack take down the screen, and it was just a beautiful concrete wall. It was a rather nice concrete wall in a brand new auditorium. And so I would pose a premise, and I would say, well, you're both physicists. But the way you define, each of you define the word elegance, which is a term in physics, is different. And you look at the periodic table differently. One looks at it, the astrophysicist, as light elements, and all the rest are heavy. And the other looks at it in the continuum, the way the rest of the world does. So you don't talk the same language. And then they started talking. So it was all intellectual jazz, all improvised conversation. And they talked as long as it was interesting, and then I said, get off. Not quite as nice as that. But you start to really think of the structure of conversation, which is the structure of questions, answered by questions, of trying to get an answer, bounded questions that bring clarity to the 2 parties. The people in this room who are in love with each other, I believe you stay in love not because of sex, but because of conversation, because you can have a conversation with another human being. It's so much the fabric of our life, and we're never taught even to talk on the phone. You know how lousy most phone calls are? The basic part of our life, talking on the phone, talking to one another, asking people questions, we never learn how to do it. There's no instructions that allow you to put together anything. There's no instructions that help me open a bottle or push the right button. And it's all part of the same basic building blocks of our lives. Now, why is that important? That's because architects don't build buildings. Landscape architects don't plant trees. Planners don't build roads. They give instructions to others to do that. And they get the information about what to do, not how to do it, but what to do by asking good questions and having conversation. Thank you very much.